Yeah, so that second part is your fact finder. The first, the planning part is what we call your follow through. And so you're an 8 in follow through. You're a 7 in fact finder. So you still are, you have this drive to get information, facts, figures, details, get them for yourself, also to share them with people. So in discussions with your wife, and I don't know her result, has she taken a Kolbe Index?
No, that's actually fascinating. I hadn't thought about that. I'd love to see what her results would be.
All right, well, we'll get you a coupon so that she
Yeah,
can take it. And if you want, we can have another quick chat, maybe with the three of us. But
that'd be awesome.
so neither of us need to guess at her result. We'll just let her do it. But with you in those discussions, A, you'd need to have a plan. B, you would probably share that plan and you'd share the stuff you found. So some people, A, wouldn't do tons of research. And maybe, even if they start with the plan and the system and, hey, I have this 3-year vision for what I want my career, my family life to look like, you share all that. You go into detail, you go into depth. You would talk about it with your wife. Again, look, we'll have different relationships with spouses too. And again, I don't know hers, but for you, it would be important to say, here's what I found. Here's what my research, here's my thinking.
Yeah.
Um, Even if she doesn't need it. And for some spouses, it's, oh my gosh, I really wish my husband would stop. I have enough. Like he wants to do it. I'm supportive. Like, don't tell me all the things you've researched. I trust
Yeah.
you. Whereas other people, like if it were the opposite, if your wife were considering, if she were considering a move, you'd ask questions. You want the information. And I'd also say, like in a personal life, that can be tricky. So
Hmm.
if your wife, frankly, whatever her Kolbe result is, given the kind of person you are where you need the information, your questions and needing that information, it's not a matter of, well, I don't trust you or I don't think you're making a good decision. It's like, well, yeah, I trust you implicitly. Sounds like you're making a great decision. I still need the information and the details for myself, having
Yeah.
nothing to do with you. So that's one area where I'll say be a little aware. And this is where I'd love to hear what your wife's results are. And even if you don't share them with me, just for the two of you
Yeah.
to talk about. Um, but honestly, no matter what her results are, if she's also an initiating fact finder, she's more likely to share information with you. Um, whatever research she's doing in details and information. She's also more likely to then ask you questions. But if she's asking questions, even though you're an initiating fact finder and you'll naturally share the information, it can also sometimes sound like a challenge rather than just curiosity. So I don't know that that's the dynamic you guys have, but just be aware of that. So
Yeah.
if she pushes back on you, sometimes asking questions and, honey, why don't you believe me on this? Take a deep breath, step back and say, hey, gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to come off like that. It's just, I'm really curious. I'm really invested and involved and turn it around. So instead of her, in this case, feeling like you're challenging her, it really is a sign that you're engaged, you're
Yeah.
involved. When you disconnect from something is when you don't ask questions and need information. So in some respects, she should be more concerned if you don't ask questions, because then it's
Yeah.
like, don't you care? Like I'm making this
Yeah.
big life decision, even though it's more for me than for us. Don't you want to know?
Yeah.
Um, so just something to think about. So relatively small for most teachers to only have 18 in a
Yeah.
room. So that's fantastic. Uh, but even at a relatively small 18, you've got all kinds of different kids. You don't get to control for that. So let's take your follow through. So, and we'll have to get to the rest of your Kolbe result. I was going to say all of it, but let's stick with your follow through. So you naturally plan and have a system and a structure and an organization. And some of those 18 kids undoubtedly shared that Kolbe result or that cognitive strength to be systematic and organized and plan and live within those structures that you probably create for your classroom. Others of them are at the opposite end of the spectrum. So one of the
Yes.
tricky things for a teacher is, look, you can't, even at 18, you can't individually customize everything for every student.
Hmm.
And yet I feel strongly that a teacher's role is to be flexible enough, and we can talk a little bit about good ways for teachers and others to do that, flexible enough to help get the most out of all different kinds of kids in your classroom. So Where it's a student who is naturally systematic and structured and organized like you, that's probably easier because for almost everybody, especially before you really get to know Kolbe and even this concept of what conation is, um, you typically lead with your strength and kind of impose that on the environment that you're in. So in this case, you professionally makes total sense for you to have a plan and to tell your kids, hey, for the unit, which is going to be the next, whatever, 4 weeks, let's say, here's what it looks like. And you tell
Yeah.
them. And even though you're teaching fifth and sixth grade, you still might have something that looks like a college syllabus.
Yeah.
Even if you don't share it all with them, but my guess is you probably would. Like, hey, here's what we're going to be doing. We're talking about, you know, you teach language arts some, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it could be, oh, here's our next grammar unit, and
Yes.
here's what it's going to look like over the next 4 weeks. And the kids in your classroom that share your 8 and follow through, they just eat that up. That is so helpful for them to see a system and a structure and be able to plan out mentally the next 4 weeks. I don't want to go overboard with this. They're fifth and sixth graders, so that doesn't mean they're going to put it all into their own system and structure. But you'll be able to tell, especially now that you know all this. And Eric has come in and talked to the kids at this school, so you've seen
Yes.
his talk also. But keep in mind, some of the kids in the classroom, they start hearing that plan, and if they can start feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be put in a straitjacket. There's no opportunity for me to freestyle and to do things
Yes.
differently and to, you know, get partway through and find shortcuts. And for any leader, and in this case, you being the leader as a teacher, we need to be aware of those things. It's not about taking you out of your game. I would never say, hey, Raymond, you shouldn't plan as much as you do. No, that's what's going to make you a great teacher is when you get to use that strength that you have. But this tricky role of a teacher is you also need to find a way for your teaching to accommodate all those kids.
Yes.
Um, Again, it can't be infinitely variable for each one, but it's got to be open-ended enough that those kids who aren't like you can also thrive.
Yeah.
And that's a tricky thing. Let me hit the other two parts of your results so that like you get a full picture and anybody listening can get kind of the full picture. So the next thing is your quick start. So your strength in quick start is to stabilize. You figure out what is going well and you stick with that. You don't just jump on the latest trend just because. You don't abandon what's working just because you feel like changing it up. You're kind of a rock in that sense. Like people can count on you to be that person that when things are going well, you keep chaos from bubbling up around you. Sometimes, frankly, where chaos is already there, you're the one who will, especially looking at the entirety of your Kolbe result. If you're in a chaotic environment, your instinct is, hey, let's figure this out. What is the pattern in the system that already exists, even if it doesn't seem like there's much, and maybe there isn't much there? What is there, and how can you bring some normalcy and some consistency to that chaotic environment? Um, and that's a really important strength. Sometimes it gets overlooked. You're at a 2, and so we would call that the counteract or prevent strength in quick start. And whichever of the 4 action modes has that, it's oftentimes overlooked. Like people don't see it as a strength so much as sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, Raymond, seriously, why can't you just be more spontaneous?
Right. And I
Because
had a
you're
question
probably
for you
not
about
that
that.
classically spontaneous person. Is that true?
Yeah, and I actually had a question about that. Like, because I strongly agree that I almost find comfort in that, like finding something that works and sticking with it. But I also sometimes view that as a possible, I don't know if weakness is the correct word, but it's like it prevents me from being spontaneous, and sometimes that makes you miss out on the new things, right? Like
Yep.
and is there a way to, I guess, still harness the strength, but also not get stuck in your ways, I think is the
Sure.
the right way to put it.
Yeah. So number one, let me start with kind of the soft parts, and then I'll get to a very more specific or answer. Um, it's not a weakness; it's who you are.
Yeah.
There might be times where there are consequences of who you are that you don't love as much, or they're not as good for a particular project or professional setting. But It's not a weakness. It's nothing you need to apologize for. It's part of who you are. And especially it's not a weakness. I want to flip it. And that's why I described it. It's your strength in quick start. And then if you look at your entire result, it's, yeah, you do need to have a system and a structure and a plan. And yes, you need information and details before you're not oh, just do it.
Yeah.
You're a look before you leap, not a
Yeah.
just do it kind of person. So, or, just go for it. What are you waiting for? It's not that you're waiting. It's that, yeah, I need some information.
Hmm.
Also appreciate when you're feeling that way, and you're going to feel that way. And by the way, people who are at the other end of the spectrum have different things where they feel like, oh, yeah, but maybe this is my weakness. So somebody at the other end of the spectrum in terms of quick stars, like, I keep doing this where I just jump in and I don't know what I should have known beforehand, and it really burns me. And man, I wish I had thought a little bit more before I just jumped into that next thing that I did.
Okay.
And by the way, there can
Yeah.
be serious consequences like bankruptcies and
Right.
divorces, and then they look back on it like, oh man, I wish I was more like Raymond, or like those people, to take you out of it. I wish I was more like those people who had more of a plan and a system and got a little more information before they just jumped into this stuff. So we all have regrets, and we can look back and go, oh, I wish maybe that last time I was different. Don't even worry about it. Like, you are who you are. And so now in
Yeah.
terms of what to do, because yeah, I totally understand there are times where you can look at a situation and kind of step outside of your body almost, and your cognitive or your thinking part of your brain is like, I should be more spontaneous here. Like, let's say, and I'll get back to a personal one, and because I think this is a fairly common thing. So again, I don't know your wife's result, but for a second, let's just hypothesize she's very different and she is maybe more spontaneous and just try things out and experiment. So cognitively, you can think, you know what? That's important to my wife. That's how she operates. So I need to do that. That would be I'd be being a good supportive husband to drive that once in a while, or at least accommodate it when she wants to do it. So here's my recommendation to you. Now that you're in that mode where you've identified it, use your strengths. So say, I'm going to plan for spontaneity.
Okay.
Now, that might sound stupid, but there are ways to do it for a spouse that are really effective. So you don't tell her you're planning for it. So I don't know, like next month something is coming up, and let's say, hey, it's summer. I've got time off. We're going to be able to take a vacation. Um, and you plan some stuff out, but you don't tell her, and you spring it on her more last minute. And by the way, maybe you have three options like, hey, honey, you know what? This weekend, and we happen to be recording this on a Friday, so you can go to one on a Friday and say, hey, this weekend we've got some time. And I was thinking we could do this, this, or this. Now, to you,
Yeah.
you've already planned them out. You've done the homework. But to her, it's last minute. You're giving her options. And by the way, make some of those options things that you've never done as a couple or as a family.
Yeah.
And if they totally crash and burn, that's okay. The last of the four things that we talk about is your implementer, which isn't implementer as in like implement, carry things out to fruition. That's more the follow through. But it's really about the use of tools and implements, is where the name comes from. But it's about the physical, tactile, tangible, hands-on way we all take action. So you're a 4, so you're near the mid-range. And it's the first of the 4 modes where you're really near that mid-range, where you really bridge the different sides of this continuum or spectrum of strengths in the tactile, tangible, three-dimensional world. So you will demonstrate things some. You will get your literal hands on objects and construct, but it's more for you about kind of restoring and repairing rather than building from scratch. So in your teaching, sure, you'll have some props that you will use to physically show and demonstrate kids, but it's not what you do all the time. It's not what you lead with. That's more, you will have almost a script for what you're doing. It isn't, I mean, I know you can't script out a day at school because things are, they are
Yeah.
spontaneous, at least in the sense of they flow, but you'll still know, like, here's where I'm going to start. I need to cover these 4 principles. I'm going to talk about these things. So it isn't literally scripted, but it will be pretty well planned.
Yeah, well, but learning this through the Kolbe system actually just helped identify exactly why, right? It's like I had these experiences, but now I can put a name to it and a reason behind it.